What is the income of them? Oh yeah. Let's not go as small, but
Okay.
Big month. Buckle up. Wow.
On your mark, get ready, get set.
It doesn't work.
10, 9, 8. We'll try something else. Okay. Thank you. Just pass it down. Maybe pass it down. Thank you. Okay. So we're doing something together, so hopefully both levels will benefit. So first of all, the sheet that I gave out, it says on top of the page, the Chassidic month of Kislev, the month of Geula. Tonight is Rosh Chodesh. It's Rosh Chodesh Kislev. And when a chassid hears the word Kislev, when a month Kislev is coming, it's like electricity goes off. Because this is a very special month. And in the Rebbe's words, in the Rebbe's sichos, in the Rebbe's letters, whenever he writes about this month, he calls it with these two names, the Chassidic month and the Chodesh HaGeula. So first I wanted to go through this little calendar of what happened on these days, when it happened, one word about it, and as we go along through the month, we'll go more into it. But these are the dates. You have 11 things here on this list. Could be there's more, but I'm going to mention 11 things here. On the list, it's in the order of the days of the month, but I will go in the chronological order, how things happened. So the first of all the things that happened on this sheet is number 7. Number 7 says the 19th of Kislev, year 1772. So you have another box on the side. You could fill in, you want to remember what happened on that day and why it's a historic day. So this is the day that all Chassidim, yeah, you didn't get? Sorry. This is the day that all Chassidim, not only Chabad, all Chassidim commemorate, because this is the day that the Maggid of Mezrich, which was the second leader of Chassidus, the successor of the Baal Shem Tov, this is the day that he was nostalgic, he passed. And for us, as Chabad Chassidim, being that we understand that the Alter Rebbe was the successor to the Maggid of Mezrich, so in a certain way, this is also the day that the Alter Rebbe became the Rebbe. This was the first day. So Yutas Kislev, 1772, that's the first on the list chronologically. The second date on this list chronologically is number 8, which is 1796. What happened in 1796 on the 20th of Kislev? On that day, that was the first day, the historic day that the Tanya was finished and published. This Tanya, which is the source of everything in Chassidus, and this is the book that sort of spread Chassidus to the whole world. And with this book, this was the beginning and the source. In fact, it says that everything we study in Chassidus, from all the Rebbes in the future, it's all included in Tanya. That's the date. And the year was 1796. But not on the 19th of Kislev, on the 20th of Kislev. And there's something very specific about that because the Alter Rebbe begged that it should be ready on the 19th of Kislev. He wanted it to be published on the day of his Rebbe's yahrzeit, of his Rebbe's anniversary, of his Rebbe's day of passing. And it wasn't on the 19th, it was the next day, just one day later, the 20th. And the Alter Rebbe was beside himself. He was very aggravated about it. No one understood why he was so aggravated. But then later something happened, which was very painful on that date. And they understood that had they had the Tanya ready earlier, it would have prevented that aggravation and that painful event from happening. And what is the painful event? So that's a number 9 on the list. That was the next thing on the list, chronologically, something that happened in 1798. And that's the most famous of all, that the Alter Rebbe was arrested. And the reason why he was arrested was because at that time the opposition against Hasidus was very, very strong. And the opposition was coming from the greatest leaders of Jewry at the time and Torah scholars. And the main reason for the opposition was because they felt and they were feared that this is a movement which is not aligned with Torah. In fact, it's a movement that's contrary to Torah. But there were many different people in this opposition. Some were more sincere and some were more just loved fighting and arguing. So what they did was something that the others probably never would have agreed to do. But one of the people in the opposition told the government, informed that the Alter Rebbe is a rebel and he's planning to make a revolution against the Tsar's kingdom, Tsar's government. And they had the Alter Rebbe arrested with the intention to, God forbid, execute. So it was a miracle the Alter Rebbe's life was saved. He was in jail for 53 days. And the day that he went out of jail was Yutas Kislev, the same day as his Rebbe's yahrzeit. So why do we write the 19th and the 20th? And by the way, in class, we're going to be going through the whole story of Yutas Kislev, but that's as we get closer to that date. Is because when the Alter Rebbe went out of jail, protocol of the jail was that the guards have to lead the prisoner to his destination. So they took the Alter Rebbe to the house that he was supposed to stay, and in the same building, on the one floor was the Chassid, whose house he was going to. On the top floor, right on top of that, there was another person. I'm not sure who was on top, who was on bottom. The other person was not only not a chassid, he was part of the opposition.
No.
So by mistake, they led the Alter Rebbe into that room. And when they did that, he locked the door. He kept the Alter Rebbe hostage for 3 hours. Chassidim had no idea where he was. And during those 3 hours, he, in today's language, was he verbally abused the Alter Rebbe in a way the Alter Rebbe said that the 3 hours in his house was more painful than the horrible torture that I had 53 days in the jail. To hear those words of abuse to come out of a fellow Jew, of my own brother, was very, very painful. And then when the Alter Rebbe went out of jail, it was such a thing that such a sort of simcha with the Alter Rebbe that it became a yontiv, just like the 19th of Kislev, they went out of jail. The 20th is the day that he went out of this person's hostage. And that's the way Chassidim understood. Had the Tanya been ready on the 20th, then this wouldn't have happened on the Yutas Kislev, this wouldn't have happened. So we covered 7, 8, and 9. The next thing that happened was number 10, 1800. Only 2 years later, the Alter Rebbe was arrested again, a second time. There was another attempt, after they failed the first time, again attempt to arrest the Alter Rebbe. And here the Alter Rebbe was released. He was arrested the same time of the year. It was right after Yontif of Tishrei. But he went out of jail a few days later. He went out of jail during Hanukkah. So there are 2 dates, number 10 and 11, the 27th of Kislev and 29th of Kislev. And they're both to celebrate the Alter Rebbe is going out of jail the second time. But apparently, on the third candle, we call it the third candle. Hanukkah is identified by the candles. So the third night of Hanukkah, the Alter Rebbe went out of jail, but he wasn't completely freed. And on the 5th candle, 2 days later, he was completely freed. So we celebrate both days. We look for excuses to have more celebrations, so we celebrate both days. Then the next thing on the list, really chronologically, this goes a little bit earlier, so I missed out on that. But number 3 does go earlier, the 9th of Kislev. The 9th of Kislev, 1773. There's a mistake here. The 9th of Kislev, it says 5534. That's when the Mittel Rebbe, the second Rebbe of Chabad, was born. And on the 9th of Kislev, the same day, that's the day that he was Nistalik. So there's a mistake. It says 9th of Kislev, Tess of Kislev. It should really say the 9th of Kislev and the 9th of Kislev. The 9th of Kislev he was born, and the 9th of Kislev he passed away. But the passing was in 1827. So I don't know why there's a mistake here. Number 3, you can erase or circle the words Tes Kislev. And number 4.
It's the one below it. No?
What? Both. They're both wrong. And both of them, in number 3 and number 4, the words Tes Kislev don't belong there. It should say 9th of Kislev, that's the birthday. 9th of Kislev, 1827 is when he passed away, was in Stalik. He lived 54 years, lived to the age of 54, exactly on the same day. What's the 10th of Kislev? The 10th of Kislev is the day that the Mittel Rebbe, the second Rebbe of Chabad, went out of jail. He was also arrested. They made an attempt to stop Chassidus by arresting him. But again, he was released from jail, and the day he went out of jail is another celebration, and that's the 10th of Kislev.
And he was in jail.
Yep.
He was arrested or he was released?
No, he was released from jail on the 10th of Kislev. The 10th is the day that he was released from jail. The Mittel Rebbe, the second Rebbe of Chabad. And the 9th of Kislev is the day that was both his birthday and his day of passing. I just want to add, you probably know that the Friedrich Rebbe was also in jail in Russia by the communists. But you don't know that the Tzemach Tzedek was locked up, and the Rebbe Marash was locked up, and the Rebbe Rasha was locked up.
Were all of them?
The reason why you might not know it, because they were never in a jail, but they were arrested in what we call a house arrest. And it was always because of their standing up against the government regarding Yiddishkeit, and that was pretty dangerous in those days. That was considered treason. Yeah, it was going against the government. So their lives were in danger, but we didn't designate a day of a miracle because they weren't in actual jail, but they were house arrest. So what?
Were they all arrested except for the Rebbe?
Except for the Rebbe, yeah. So one time the Friedrich Rebbe, I just want to tell you a cute story. The Friedrich Rebbe was in his apartment here in America for bringing on Yud Beis Tammuz the day he was released from jail. So there's an older chassid there, but in order to understand what he said, I have to just give a little introduction. In halacha, there are certain things you're obligated to do. There's certain things that it says you're not obligated, but if you want to do it, go beyond the letter of the law, it's okay. There's certain things that there's so much just for selected individuals that if you do it, it's like showing off, like you're being arrogant. In halacha, that's called mirza kiyura. If you do this, it looks like you're showing off. So this older chassid was sitting by the table, and he knew that the Friedrich Rebbe was arrested. The first time he was arrested was when he was 11 years old. Yes, he put his life on the line to save another Jew. And as a result of that, he got arrested. And then he was arrested a few more times. The famous story that he was arrested on Yud Beis Tammuz, that was the 7th time. So he said to the Friedrich Rebbe, he said like his Rebbe, it looks like the Rebbes of Chabad have this custom to get arrested, every one of them. But 7 times, that's showing off already. You know, like that's too much. Yeah. We'll soon try to explain a little bit more what this is all about. But let's go to the next date on the list in the chronological order. So I guess the next date on the list in chronological order would be probably 1977, Rosh Chodesh Kislev, which is, it's actually the day itself would be Friday, the first day of Kislev in 1977. That was a miracle that happened with our Rebbe, which Amir Tashem will talk about it more either tomorrow or Friday. We'll have a special class about it, where the Rebbe suffered a severe heart attack, or in the words of the doctor, a massive heart attack. And I remember hearing the doctor speak, and he said, I know the Rebbe performed a lot of miracles, but my understanding is that this miracle that he performed, that he survived this heart attack, is probably the greatest miracle he ever performed. Those were his words. We'll go into it more. But the Rebbe did not go to a hospital. The Rebbe insisted on staying in 770. And the doctor, whose name was Dr. Weiss, should live and be well, it is in Chicago. He agreed, and he said, under one condition, that all the equipment that we have in a hospital in the ICU unit should be come to 770. And within 24 hours, they had an ICU unit in 770. And the reason why we celebrate Rosh Chodesh Kislev, because that was the day that the doctor said that the Rebbe can go home. It's like a person being discharged from the hospital. For the Rebbe, that was the day he left. So we celebrate that day as the day of his recovery, the miraculous recovery. That's 1977.
Right.
Yes?
Like where in 770? What room?
In the Rebbe's room, in his office.
Wow.
Where that is, when you look at 770, you see two sets of windows. The windows on the left, that was the Rebbe's private office.
That's where we go in, like when the Rebbe's room is open. Like
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry, I really messed up the chronological order because I forgot number 6. Number 6 is the 14th of Kislev, and that's the day that the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin got married, 1928. And there's a lot of history behind that, how it happened, where it happened, what led to it, more things that are related to it, which again, when we get to that time, we'll go more into the details. But for us as Chassidim, the Rebbe once said that this is the day that made the connection between me and the Chassidim and me. And what the Rebbe meant in very simple words is, how did the Rebbe come to become our Rebbe? Because he's the son-in-law, even though the Rebbe himself was a descendant of the Alter Rebbe, Tzemach Tzedek, but how did he come to be our Rebbe? Is because he was a son-in-law of the previous Rebbe. So that day was the day that connection was sort of started. So Yud Dalet Kislev is a wedding date of the Rebbe, and when we come to that date, we'll talk a little bit more about what happened and what the Rebbe said about this date and so on. So that happened in 1928. And let's see, we did, number 2 is the only one we didn't do, right? Number 2 is also something that we have to talk about more later. But one of the dates on the Lubavitch Chassidic calendar is Hey Tevis, the 5th day of Tevis. And that's related to an incident, sort of a painful incident, where someone was taking Rebbe has a very precious library, a library that was an accumulation of things that came from the Alter Rebbe, the Mitter Rebbe, Tzemach Tzedek, Rebbe Marash. Every Rebbe continued that and added to that library. And there was someone who was taking books from the library, and they're very precious books, and was selling them to make a lot of money on it. And it went to court. And it was really also miraculous because no one believed that the court would rule in such a way that because the other person who took it was also from the family, related. And usually with cases of inheritance, it doesn't go so simple. But they ruled that everything belongs to the Rebbe and all the books have to go back. So it was still an appeal, but the day that the books finally came back to 770 was the 2nd day of Kislev. So this month has a lot of history that are related to Chassidus, the development of Chassidus. And as you see, there are a lot of days which are days of Geula. Now, there's one day of Geula I didn't mention because it's not specifically related to Chassidus, but it's also related to Kislev. Anyone know any about the history of a Geula Dikadei in Kislev?
Oh, Hanukkah.
Hanukkah. So Kislev already has a history of Geula, because Hanukkah was redemption from the enemies of Eden at that time, and then we didn't have the Beis Hamikdash, it was rededicated again. So from the start, this is a month that has to do with Geula. So this is the way the Rebbe refers to it: the Chassidic month and the month of Geula. So I wanted to explain a little bit this getting arrested. Yeah, if you want to be a real chassid, no, chassid shop. Yeah.
Before you go further, can you explain the second Kislev again? Like, this is when the books were returned? Or?
No, Hey Tavis is when the federal court ruled that the books belong to the Rebbe, and the other person has to give everything back. But then it still was held back, and there was an appeal. So the day they actually returned to 770, the day that they came back was Beis Kislev.
What year was the Hey Tavis?
Hey Tavis was 1980, it was Memzai, so it was 86. And it took a year for them to give the second ruling that they overruled, they canceled the appeal.
So is that 5747?
Yeah, that would be 5747, and this was 5748, almost a year later. Just to say one word about this, about the idea of why do they keep getting arrested? Of course, we understand that people were in opposition, this happened, but still, there's got to be more to it. And the way it's explained in Chassidus, and again, once we go into the story in more detail, we'll talk more about it. But just let me explain the general concept. Chassidus explains that when the Yidden were in Mitzrayim and they were suffering, it wasn't just they were suffering because of something that went wrong. Being in Mitzrayim was a preparation for receiving the Torah, somehow or other. The same thing with Galus. Galus is a preparation and sort of a process of refinement and cleansing and preparing us for Geula. Starting from the first day of creation, something similar happened. Adam Rishon was created, and then Hashem wanted to create Chava. And by creating Chava, that would create the potential for children and generations and the whole world to come into existence. But what did Hashem do? Adam was put to sleep. He became unconscious. And then Hashem created Chava, which means first came a state of Golus, in a sense, personal Golus. He became unconscious. Hashem put him to sleep. And then Hashem created Chava, which was the source of all life that came later. In the same way, Mitzrayim is the same idea. So the answer to the explanation to this, we're not explaining so much the why, but we're explaining what's going on, the mechanism, how it's working. So this is a little bit of what it says in Chassidus. That generally speaking, you all are aware of this concept called tzimtzum, which means that there's a very bright light, and there's like the sun shines brightly, and it's so bright and so intense that it's blinding. So you have to wear sunglasses to protect your eyes. And then you could see. If you wouldn't, it would be glaring in your eyes, and long enough, it might God forbid blind a person. So sometimes you're in a place where there's a very big light, you have to cover the light so you can actually see. So what happens is the light becomes less, the light is not as intense, it becomes dimmer, but that allows me to see. Chassidus says the same is with a teacher and a student. That if a teacher understands a concept on a very deep level, it's so deep that if they would communicate and transmit this concept to the student would be overwhelmed by the depth of it, and they wouldn't be able to understand it. They would be just confused because it's beyond their capacity, their intellectual capacity. So the teacher has to hide the depth, and by hiding the depth, then he can allow a little bit of this concept to be communicated to the student, Now we can understand it, and eventually you get to understand the whole picture. So basically, this means that you need the darkness before the light. You understand that part? When there's a brighter light that has to shine in the heavenly realm, first Hashem creates curtains. He creates something blocking the intensity of the light, and that allows the lower light to be revealed. And this is the pattern through the whole creation. There's a story in Gemara. If you learn the story without Chassidus, it's almost shocking. But this is the way the story goes. That there was once a rabbi, one of the sages, that he said to his student, right now I'm in a very, very uplifted mood. You can ask me anything you want in the world, and I'll give you the answer. Could you imagine you had such opportunity? You'd probably be spending a whole day trying to think what question to ask. You want to know the question he asked? He said, how come when I see a herd of goats running, the black goats go ahead of the white goats? Imagine the question. So I don't know why he thought of that question, but it's probably related to the answer. And he said, oh, because it's the way Hashem created the world. When Hashem created the world, first was night, and then came day. And why did Hashem create the world in such a way? This is the answer. Hashem's light is infinite. And from an infinite light, you can't have a finite world. So first you need darkness blocking that infinite light. And then you can have a world that could be sustained and exist with a little bit of a more limited and finite light. So this is the pattern. First there's darkness, and then comes light. So in other words, because there's a goal to reveal something very deep and very high and very powerful, it is preceded by something up there that's blocking, and that allows this very powerful light to be revealed. So the same thing with Mitzrayim. They were Mitzrayim because up there, the light of Hashem had to be concealed. As a result of that, down here, there was a state of Golus. And the same is with the Beis Hamikdash. Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. They were for 70 years in the Golus of Babylon. And after that, they built the second Beis Hamikdash. Again, that Golus was a preparation for the light that's be shining in the second Beis Hamikdash. Now we're in Golus as a preparation for Mashiach. In fact, one of the answers that are given, why is this Golus so much longer than all the others? Hanukkah was a time of Golus. Purim was a time of Golus. The way Chassidus explains it, Hanukkah, there was also a new light shining in the world that was never there before. So what preceded it was a concealment. There's concealment up there, so there's a Golus down here. Purim, there was a light of Hashem that had to be revealed, a new light, and therefore there was concealment up there to block that new greater light. As a result of that, there was a Golus down here, which is the Golus in the times of Purim. But how come those were limited? A few years, 18 years, 14 years, 70 years, 400 years, but not, we're almost 2,000 years. So the answer is the concealment is always in proportion to what's going to be revealed. In other words, if you're going to hide a light that's extremely powerful, you need a very powerful blocking, a curtain that blocks it. If it's a light that's not so powerful, you can have something simpler that's blocking. So the stronger the light, the greater it is, whatever it is that's blocking. Being that when Mashiach comes, that'll be the biggest light that ever existed. In fact, that will be eternal forever. So therefore, whatever's blocking is also much stronger than anything else that happened before. So in fact, this is one of the ways that it's explained. When a person is told there's going to be Golus for 70 years, as much as it's difficult to bear, but you know in your head, at the end of the 70 years, it's over. At the end of the 400 years, it's over. At the end of the 20 years, it's over. But when a person is told, or people are told, you're going to be in Golus, and you don't know when it's going to end, to a certain extent, psychologically, it's like something which has no end. When you know that something's going to end in a week, in a month, in a year, even if it's 5 years, but you it's limited in your head. But when you have no idea when this condition will end, then it in your head, to a certain extent, is the closest to forever that could be. Psychologically, there's no end to it because I don't know when the end will be. So being that here Hashem is going to reveal a light when Mashiach comes, that'll be eternal, forever, unlimited. So therefore, the Golus is also a longer Golus, and a Golus that to a certain extent is like infinite, has no end. Baruch Hashem, we're coming to the end. But that's what it's all about. So the same thing is with Chassidus. Chassidus had to be revealed, and every generation, each Rebbe revealed more Chassidus. And the same thing, every time something new, a new light has to be revealed, in Shamayim, there also has to be something concealing that light and not allowing it to be revealed fully, otherwise it'll be too overwhelming. So down here, it turned out to be imprisonment, other things that were blocking it from happening. Yeah.
Is it like really that we don't know when it will end, because isn't it supposed to come regardless?
So now we know because we're at the end.
At 600, but that wasn't known like in the 6th millennium.
Oh, about the 6th millennium.
Like when we hit year 6,000, like would that be the end if somebody was to hold on to something psychologically?
Right, but I guess 6th millennium for everybody was not part of their reality anyway.
Right.
Even now, it's not so much part of our reality because it's in over 200 years from now. So again, relatively, it's like, it's not infinite, but relatively it's like that. Because then psychologically, if I don't know an end, then it's like it has no end. Yeah.
So if every Rebbe was like imprisoned, except for our Rebbe, and every Rebbe has like a Chag HaGeula, then like is Hey Teves our Rebbe's Chag HaGeula?
Right. So it's Hey Teves, Rosh Chodesh Kislev, these dates that certain things happen, which also seem to be, blocking. And now here limiting and blocking and affecting things in a negative way. That was the same idea, but concealment that was preceding some great bright light that had to be revealed.
Also, if Hey Teves is just the day that the courts ruled that the books were the Rebbe's, and Beis Kislev were the days that the books should actually return, then why is the Hey Teves more of like a bigger day than Beis Kislev? We always learn about like action is the biggest thing, and like
I guess because the miracle was not that the books actually came back. The miracle was that the court ruled. When you know the story and the detail, we can see that it was a miracle that the court should rule from a United States federal court perspective to rule that. And you see, when you hear the story, the details, why they ruled and how they ruled, we see that it was totally miraculous.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we have 30 seconds till 10 o'clock. So the other sheets I prepared will have to be next time. Okay, sorry. Okay. Okay, so happy Rosh Chodesh, everybody. Yeah.
That's Kislev. What was that? Like, which Rebbe was
So the first Rebbe of Chabad was arrested.
about the Rebbe was arrested? Okay.
That's the one. That's this. This is when the second leader of Chassidus, the Maggid of Mizrich, passed away on this day.
Okay. Also, when I said Rosh Chodesh, like when Hasidim hear Rosh Chodesh Kislev, what do they think of that? Like that is
No, I said it was like electricity because it's a very exciting month.